And we're already about a week into 2026, but I promise you this is a year that is pregnant with a lot of activities, from the corridors of politics to the shores of economics, and then also governance and anti-corruption. We will look at 2026 as a year in prospect. What will be the outlook in the arena of politics? When we go to economy, what are we going to look at? Are we going to see a sustain? We're going to see the sustain. The gains we've chalked so far, or we are going to see something different in 2026. So tonight on PM Express, we have a special show for you. We are going to break it down into three. The first part definitely will start from the corridors of politics, because we have a lot to talk about and to chew on as far as politics is concerned in 2026, from the NPP's upcoming January 31st Congress, or if you like, primaries. That will be where we are going to start the entire conversation from, where we talk about politics. We also tell you about the NDC as well. They have major, political, events coming up this year as well. They're going to have, Congress from October till we end the year. The NDC will also be heavy on the ground trying to, elect their party executives. And if we are looking at politics, then definitely my guest for this particular conversation, this aspect of the special show, I'm going to talk to Dr. Asa Asante, who is a senior lecturer, and a political scientist at the University of Ghana Political Science Department. And then also Dr. Osei Kwapon, who is a fellow at Cedi. They will help me as far as this first aspect of tonight's special show is concerned in the arena of politics. They will be helping me do this breakdown. Look at the year in terms of how the outlook is going to be in politics. And we'll go to economy, because that is very, very important. Even during Christmas, you had the debates around gold for oil. The Cedi, how it ended the year with an appreciation. First time since 1994. And if you like, first time since, redenomination. We'll be engaging those who matter on the economic outlook of the country. And in fact, we'll look at inflation, we'll look at our debt servicing obligation. What is the burden ahead and what is the success also ahead? We'll look at that, and definitely I will be talking to the man, Professor Godfred Bokin, and also talk to Seth, Chumakwabwa, and then we'll be joined also by Ernest Nogbe, who is a Shaman MP, also member for the Finance Committee. And then we'll do the last relay, go into the aspect of governance and anti-corruption, because there are so many issues on the front burner this year as far as this aspect of the country is concerned, in terms of aura. What will be the progress? The SPs, the petition to remove the SP, what is also going to be the outlook this year, and then the Constitutional Review Committee's report. How are we going to forward that, and how are we going to carry on with that this year? There have been petitions, not just the SP, but also the EC. And on that tangent, I will also be talking to those who matter. Professor Agyapong will be my guest when we come to this aspect of the conversation. Of course, Dr. Ken Ashigbe. We will be talking also about galamsey. He will join me for that conversation when we get to that last aspect of the show. And then Daniel Dumalevo, trust me, will also join us on the show when we get to this leg, where we'll be talking about anti-corruption, the fight against galamsey, and governance. But definitely, we need to start the conversation on the tangent of politics, because this is a year that is pregnant with a lot of political activities. So we start from the corridors of the NPP, who are currently preparing to have their presidential primary on 31st of January this year. We are getting very, very close. And so Dr. Asa Asante is here with me, and then Dr. Osei Sapon also joined me for this conversation. Gentlemen, you're welcome to PM Express. This is a special edition of PM Express, where we are starting the year, looking at the year in prospect, trying to look at 2026, the outlook, looking at it from the tangent of politics, economy, governance, and anti-corruption. So I wanted to start from politics. Dr. Asa Asante, if you can hear me, good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. And good evening to Dr. Agyapong and, of course, our viewers as well.
Dr. Agyapong, can you hear me, please?
Yes, good evening to you. Good evening, Dr. Asante. Good evening to viewers as well.
Of course, I mean, we'll go into the conversation, but you know PMS Press is always brought to you by PEP Student, Cavity Fighter, Academic Times, and Synthes Tank. Because of them, we have a show. And in fact, let's start from the arena of politics. Dr. Asante, I want to start with you. We are counting down to that big day of the NPP. The simple question is it going to be a showdown, or is it going to be a second chance, or a new face? What will be the outlook when we look at the NPP's upcoming, national, primaries, as far as the presidential primary is concerned?
It's a difficult one. If you look at the trajectory so far, a lot of things have gone in. Previously, you could just stick your neck out and say that, yes, this person will lead. But the way the campaign is moving on and the issues that the candidates are being confronted with, it gives you a sense that it's not going to be an easy task. But if you look at it, for me, people are going to look at who will be the best marketable candidate that can bring in the votes, right? Dr. Bawumia has contested the election and lost heavily. I have no doubt in my mind that he has all manner of qualities that are to his credit. But that deficit of 1.7 million people who did not vote for him, what has he put in place to galvanize the support of those people who want to vote 2028? He is outside politics, government now, in terms of the nation. In terms of the nation, you are looking at a policy from his government or his party. His party is not in power. So what is he going to do to attract those voters well? When he was in government, his party could not, do well for those who refused. They are saying Asante reading. So what is it that that candidate, Dr. Bawumia, will be able to do to galvanize more support to win, if he wins the day and win the national election? You look at what Brian Agyapong, yes, credible man with all resources and all that. But would the people accept him to give him the votes and then also contest the election? What is he bringing to the table? The way he's campaigning, he's exposing all manner of things out, especially about Dr. Bawumia. If Bawumia wins, will he be able to campaign? And if he's going to campaign, what is he going to say to change the things he has said about Dr. Bawumia? That is something that is going to indict the whole party. Look at Agyapong. For me, and where I sit, I believe that he is the guy that, if the party believes sincerely, he's the guy that they should watch and give their votes. Because we look at the baggage that each carries because of the association with previous government. He doesn't have that. But he's somebody, I've been listening to his campaign with rapt attention, and it come out with what ideas, leadership qualities, and all that. But the voters, have they seen this? Is it a candidate that the voters they believe in? I believe, of course, is a candidate that the voters believe strongly that he has what it takes to lead the country. But if that is the case, then they must step in the plate and then vote basically for him. But that is a decision of the party. And I'm not the one to. But the last one, last two would be what? Kennedy Agyapong. Fantastic person by all standards. He has something to show. And he's going ahead and all that. We know his public outbursts and all that. But normally when I talk about these issues, I believe there are issues that if the team is minded, and so far what I've seen, they've been able to work on him and then make sure that he doesn't cross the line. And for me, that's the essence of what, making sure that you package your candidate to be able to meet the public demand. So I believe that he is also a very giant candidate and that he can also contest and contest fiercely, right? Then the last person is what? Dr. Ducho. Fine gentleman and all that. But I have seen that he has come in as a fresh person. He has the prospect for the future, but for this election, I'm afraid he's going to what? Assist them, but he will not win.
Wow. Let me hear from Dr. Sesapon. I mean, what are your expectations for Kwapon for the NPP's presidential primaries?
Thank you very much. So I believe the race really boils down to a contest between Dr. Bawumia and the Honorable Kennedy Agyapong, with Dr. Bawumia really being in somewhat of a lead, at least for my reading of the way the election is going. And the only empirical evidence we have so far is the polls being conducted by Global Info Analytics, led by Mr. Musa Dankwa. The most recent poll has Dr. Bawumia a little below 50%, but with still a sizable lead ahead of Honorable Kennedy Agyapong. I think the warning sign in that poll is the percentage of respondents who said they either wouldn't disclose or they are undecided. When you combine those two categories, it forms about 20-something% of the sample, right? So if you do a projection, you say to yourself that when people do not disclose who they want to vote for or are undecided, most of the time it is not a good sign for the incumbent. In this case, that would be Dr. Bawumia. But at the same time, if you look at the fact that he's only a few points below 48, it means that if in the general population of delegates who would end up casting a vote on January 31st, that 20-something% are up for grabs, you know that Honorable Kennedy Agyapong is not going to get all of that 20-something. And so the former vice president has a shorter hurdle to cross to get has a shorter hurdle to cross to secure the nomination than the Honorable Kennedy Agyapong. But it appears that the race has heated up, the race has intensified. If you are Dr. Bawumia, you want the race to be over by January 31st. Because again, when you look at the trends, you see some reduction in support as time has gone on. And then in the case of Honorable Kennedy Agyapong, you see that with time in the Global Info Analytics poll that his support has increased. So January 31st, if you are Dr. Bawumia, can't come too soon. And if you are Honorable Kennedy Agyapong, who knows what you could do with a little bit more time. The only thing that I would add about the race for me is the intensity of the rivalry, the rhetoric that I see in terms of especially the two main camps of both Dr. Bawumia and Honorable Kennedy Agyapong, and my worry about what happens post the primary, right? That when it is all over, whoever wins has a Herculean task in reuniting and bringing the party together. And I just wonder how difficult that reconciliation would be, given how intense the fight is and some of the rhetoric that is being traded across the two camps of these two leading contenders for the parties.
Doc, I want us to look at the current situation of the NPP. What kind of candidate do you think that will best fit the NPP's current situation, will lift them from where they are to possibly victory in 2028? How would the delegate be looking at all five candidates, side by side, their current situation, and how are they going to use that to decide on which of the candidates to actually vote for?
Every political party wants to win an election, which means that the first thing on the minds of delegates is definitely going to be among these five candidates who is likely to secure us victory against whoever the NDC nominates in 2028. So they'll be looking at that. in addition to a winnable candidate, one of the things that the delegates would have to wrestle with is, do we want to, quote unquote, start from scratch, which is normally what you'd hear in these party primaries when they are thinking about, do we maintain the candidate we already have, or do we take our chances with a new candidate? You would often hear the conversation, well, we've had this candidate for 1, 2, 3 years already. The voters know him or her. We don't have to start from scratch. We don't have to reintroduce and remarket that candidate to the electorate. So that usually is also on the minds of the party delegates. Other times, though, and that's the argument that I see coming from those who are supporting the Honorable Kenneth Agyapong, which is you also have to factor in the size of the defeat in 2024 and ask yourself, do you want to take your chances with a candidate who gave us a really bad defeat, or do you want to take your chances with a new candidate? So that, for me, is what the delegates will be wrestling with. But ultimately, it will boil down to who gives us a best shot at the presidency in 2028 against whoever the NDC nominates. And I think that is where you see in the Global Info Analytics poll why Dr. Bawumia is leading, but also seeing a number of people who are undecided, which tells me that there's still some hesitation around, do we want to present the same candidate, or do we want to change horses in midstream?
Since you brought the NDC, let's bring in the party in power. They will also not, lay silent this year. They will be also electing their national executives. This is a party that currently has Mr. Fifi Fiabikwete as the general secretary. Johnson Esidu Ketia is the chairman, who a lot are saying that, well, he could actually put himself up for election in terms of who will lead the next phase of the NDC. The NDC's approach is to move from electing their executives before they do their primaries. Let's look at this strategy in 2026. Do you think that this will actually have any form of influence as far as the NPP's primary is concerned? And even if you look at the NDC's strategy, what do you think informed them? I know that this is their usual strategy, but do you think that the NPP's decision to actually go to the polls very early to elect their flag bearer could also compel the NDC to possibly follow right after their national executive election to also elect their flag bearer for 2028?
It could possibly, in the sense that I'm sure they would want to match the NPP's elected candidate in terms of how much time that person has to introduce themselves to or reintroduce themselves to the electorate, that they would want to also match that same time frame, especially because for the NDC, they will be electing a new flag bearer. They won't have an incumbent contesting in 2028, which means that they could really use that time in projecting whoever becomes their candidate for 2028. So it could have an impact on when the NDC decides to hold its presidential primaries. And who knows, maybe they might want to do that right after they elect their new set of national executives, whether it's in new faces or whether they would keep their incumbent.
Let me bring in Dr. Sasante. What should we expect from the NDC camp? I mean, starting from electing the executive before electing, a flag bearer. What should we expect from their camp this year?
Obviously, you expect that they are building the system from the base, that you elect from the polling station, the constituency, the regional, the national, before you get to the top. It is always the best way, because you are able to galvanize or carry everybody along. And then when you get all your leadership positions filled at the bottom, then you ask them to select the best for the party. It becomes very easy, and people will not read meanings into it like the way people are reading meanings into the NPP one, that, hey, it is skewed towards favoring somebody to win election over the others. Yes, that one, you allow the contest, the playing field, an equal playing field for everybody. That also limits the rancor, the division, and the bickering in the party. And it bodes well for the party to be able to build a formidable party machinery to contest the election. Remember, the 2028 election, Mahama is not going to contest. A new person is coming up. So you want to create less problems. Remember, when you are in government, due to positions and other things that people don't have those rewards and other, it normally affects the party in a certain way. So you don't want to compound the issue with these things. And that is what is playing out negatively in the camp of NPP, in that, hey, people are reading all manner of meanings into it. But that is what I expect. It's going to produce a very interesting election for the NDC.
Well, you speak about interesting election, but let's look at, this is a party that currently has a significant number of its current national, executive who are currently serving in this, government. Sammy Gyamfi, for instance, has moved from being the national, communication director to now, being part of, he's a CEO of the Gold Board. You also have a number, even the youth organizer, and a number of them have been appointed into various government positions. Is that really going to affect the outlook of the NDC's, election of national executive and regional and all other, executive in 2026?
Oh, it's not going to do much, because we've seen it before. Normally, when the time comes, those who are interested will have to put their seat down and then contest for the election. It's not a new thing, but all there is to it is that you need leaders who are marketable and who can reach everywhere and their ideas resonate with people. Not only that, you need also people who can have more constituencies in terms of their reach to bring in more people to win their seat. And of course, you want to work with people with less baggage, so that it doesn't become ground for opposition to feed on that and also use it to scuttle all the efforts of your party or your plans. And of course, you want somebody who is linked with the rank and file of the people, so as to be able to endear himself to those people to marshal out the good. But of course, you need a leader with vision and whose vision goes beyond the party. And finally, you need somebody who is alive to the problems of this country, so that in spite of all the structure you have put in place, in spite of all the electoral processes you are going through, you need somebody who can think outside the box, solve our problems head on. One of the challenging problems for this party today is the issue of galamsey. And it has extended into so many areas: water quality, food production, and all that. It is something that the party must take seriously. So you need a leader who can deal with these things. Not only that, but as soon as you open the economy and all that, last year we didn't see much. We saw improvement. As soon as they begin to have challenges with the economy, and that come to add to the galamsey trouble.
Yeah.
And if NDC don't set up,
let's look at this particular positions. For instance, the communication position. For instance, you need to replace Sammy Gyamfi in chairmanship position if General Mosquito decides, or Cedi decides to go for the presidency or for the main flag bearer. Who do you think will be the best fit for Cedi, Sammy Gyamfi, and all the others who are currently serving and may not be able to, put themselves up again for elections?
It shouldn't be a difficult thing. Right now, let me say that the NDC is a mass party. So they have all manner of quality of human beings who are in there. When the time comes and then they offer themselves for such position, you will see them. But I have no doubt in my mind that these positions will be filled with equally competent or even better, and experienced people than those who have today.
Do you have anybody in mind?
Why it's a mass party.
Do you have anybody in mind?
Oh, I don't know those who want to really show interest in this, but I'm saying that the party is a mass party. It cut across all sections of this country. So they have all manner of human resources who can step in the plate and then fight for the party. The team that you are seeing today, that was not the team that started in 1992, but that is how political parties operate. They operate based on recruitment and all that. So at the end of the day, there are people who are nursing their boots. Just give them time; they will come up and they perform the miracle for the party.
Dr. Sekopon, I mean, let's start on this tangent. I mean, if you look at if you look at party politics, for instance, it's actually filled with a lot of votes buying and all of that. What do you expect this year in terms of the various primaries and the party politics we'll have and the elections we'll have this year? What should we expect? Are we likely to see the vote buying, incidents and situations going up, or we are likely to see a different thing altogether this year?
Not to sound cynical, but I don't expect to see anything different. We would see or read or hear stories about the same incidents of vote buying or vote influencing. It would be framed as it was just something to support TNT or whatever. But I don't think that dynamic of electoral politics, especially when it comes to internal party politics, would change. I have advocated and I support the recommendation from the Constitutional Review Committee that when it comes to internal party elections, if you're a registered member of a political party in good standing, you should be allowed to participate in party primaries. Now, I'm not sure if the political parties would embrace that recommendation, but my argument has always been that if our concern is that a candidate can easily, quote unquote, buy a number of delegates, then to make it harder to do that, if you have an open primary, it is more difficult to, quote unquote, buy an entire constituency than it is to, quote unquote, buy a group of delegates. But I don't see that dynamic, as cynical as that may sound, I don't see that dynamic changing in the primaries and party elections we'll see this year.
Well, moving away from party politics in the arena of Pandai, what are your projections this year?
Well, I await for the ruling of the Supreme Court, especially because I'm not sure, with all due respect, I support the High Court's ruling of rerunning the election in the entire constituency. I think that where the infractions were detected in those number of polling stations that became contentious, that you want those rerun. So I would wait just to see how the Supreme Court handles that case in terms of whether the remedy proposed by the High Court is the appropriate remedy, or whether the court would overturn and then would have to go for a different remedy, like a limited election in the problematic polling stations.
Dr. Sasante, Pandai rerun, what should we expect?
I would still also wait for the Supreme Court to make a determination. But beyond that, when finally they hit the ground, two things will come to play: contest of ideas, referendum of their work. NPP not in power. What work did they do in the constituency that they are entitled to maintain their seats? And then NPP, NDC is in government. What is it that they can offer to convince people that they should snub NPP and then get onto the bandwagon of the NDC? And this is driven by what? Resources, strategy, and message.
Well, viewers, you need to stick and stay with me. We will be going on a very short break. When we come back, we're going to have the second leg of our conversation, touching base on, what we expect from the arena of the economy. We're going to talk about debt restructuring. We're going to talk about the burden ahead in terms of even the exchange rate situation. What should we expect in 2026, the year 2026? We're already a week into the year, and the economy will play an important role in how the country will look. The outlook of Ghana in 2026, the economy will be very, very important. Inflation and, debts, management. We are going to look at that. We're going to talk to Professor Godfred Gbokpin. And when we come back from this short break, we're going to go on the economy. Well, it's the aspect of the conversation that would directly affect you. We are talking about bread and butter issues around Ghana's economy. This year, last year, I'm still in this, 2025, but in 2025, something significant happened. The Cedi, for the first time, saw a cumulative appreciation since 1994. And we had a lot of conversations around it. And there were a lot of conversations also around how the economy was built around the kind of momentum we are seeing in the gold market. This year, how is it going to look at? We're going to talk about the energy sector. We'll talk about inflation. We'll talk about certain things that affect you like tariff, and even talk about debt servicing obligations, because this year there is that high likelihood that by May or August 2026, the IMF program will come to an end. How will Ghana look like for the first time in about 3 years without the heavy hands of the International Monetary Fund? And to help me have this do this conversation, Professor Patrick Isumin is joining me via Zoom. Prof, you're welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, and good evening to viewers.
Good evening, Prof. Setu Makwabwa is CEO, Association of Ghana Industries, is also joining us via Zoom for this important conversation. Setu, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, let me start with Prof. Let's start with the burden ahead. 2026 is a year that we've been looking for, especially looking at how we've structured our debt servicing obligation after the restructuring we did from 2023 down to 2024. What is the burden ahead, and how does 2026 look like in terms of our debt servicing obligation as a country, Prof?
Good evening again. Yes, I think you are right to point out that the way the debt restructuring structured the payment initially looked like we're going to have to make more substantial payment, especially from 2026. Now, if you from the time in 2024, I believe, when we closed the Eurobond, it looked very daunting and very worrying, because you realize that our payment obligations were going to multiply by the time we reach 2026. Now, if you put together where our revenue base was and also where the currency was, at the time the currency was around 16, then obviously the repayment burden looks extremely difficult. But now, if you look at how our external sector has performed in 2025 and expected to continue in 2026, in terms of our current account and the reserves that we've accumulated, but also secondly, in terms of how the Cedi has performed, you have to say it doesn't look as bleak as it used or it looked 2 or 3 years ago when you look at the current position. To be fair, the payment obligations are higher. I think the payment obligations are running upward of, let me sure I get my numbers correct.
I think it's about 1.3 billion Eurobond.
1.3 billion.
Yeah, for Eurobonds. We paid 700 million last year, and it's expected to go out as high as 1.3 billion this year for the Eurobond. In fact, if you look at the trajectory, it is the highest in terms of the outlook for all the other years.
Yes, I think the good thing is that we have known this for a long time. And I think one aspect where the IMF program has helped is halting additional commercial debt. And also, so we've mostly been on concessional borrowing since then. And then also, even you notice that the disbursement of the bilateral loans, even the ones that had been agreed before, had been capped. I believe, $250 million per year.
Absolutely.
So I think if you look at the debt and an exchange rate of 16, and then you look at the debt service obligations at an exchange rate sitting around 11, then suddenly it doesn't look too bleak. So I think the worry that I had at the beginning when I first saw how the Eurobond restructuring had been structured, it doesn't look as ominous as initially looked. So I think on that score, perhaps, and given also how our current account has performed and is expected to perform, I think perhaps 2026 is not going to be the certain time bomb that we initially thought it would be.
Mr. Kwaba, let's talk about the real ones. Industry. What are your expectations this year? What outlook are you looking at in terms of the data that you yourself you've actually observed? How is it looking like for your folks and the industry this year as far as the economy is concerned?
Well, thank you very much and good evening to your viewers again. I think for industry, we are quite hopeful that this year is going to be good, judging from the performance last year. You remember around 2022 to 2024, we had this economic crisis. Inflation was as high as 50%. Today it's dropped to about 6.3%, not just a single digit, but way below the normal expectation. So that is quite significant. Our foreign reserves, we ended the year with about 5 months or so import cover. And there are all kinds of positive projections as per the budget. I think that if you base it on the performance last year and the projections that we've had in the budget, the tax reforms and all the plans that government has put in place, then one could say, yes, we are quite optimistic about the business environment this year. But having said so, we are always cautious because for business people, it's about practicality of things. The biggest challenge we have is how do we sustain the gains we've made? And not that we are doubting the capacity of government to sustain the gain, but we are cautious because we've seen that several times where we've made good gains and then the slightest hit on the economy through the foreign environment, then it affects us. So that's why we're always asking how sustainable our system is. And the sustainability in the long term depends on how productive we are in terms of industrial contribution to GDP, agricultural contribution to GDP, the productive sector. Once you have not really shored up the productive sector to a level where you are comfortable, then it will always raise the question of the sustainability. So we are confident, we are hopeful. We know that what has happened last year was good, and the projections for this year looks positive, but we are cautiously optimistic, especially the fact that the IMF program has been very helpful, has been instrumental in achieving this stability. But we know it's ending this year. By the latter part of the year, the IMF program will no longer be with us. How is government going to fare beyond that? We start paying the bonds, as was mentioned by Prof. Assuming what to be the implication, much as it doesn't sound so negative, and it looks like we are managing to contain the situation, it will still have an implication in terms of our budgetary contributions to it, and therefore they have serious development that we have to be contending with. The other aspect is that government have plans to shore up the productive sector, the big push agenda, the agricultural sector agenda, the 24-hour economy. It all depends on how we are able to manage ourselves through this. If in the end we are unable to support the productive sector, we are unable to increase output and productivity in industry to contribute so much to the economic development, we are unable to link the agricultural sector effectively to industrial sector, then unfortunately we may not be able to achieve the objectives we have in the long term.
You made an important point.
These are the areas that we are very much concerned about.
Exactly. You touched on an important area that I think I need to ask you your view on, which is the 24-hour economy, which was launched last year. Did industry feel it last year, and are you hoping to feel it better possibly this year?
I don't think industry industry felt it so much last year, and it's simply because last year was more of setting the agenda. There were a lot of discussions as to how the program will go. There were a lot of consultations with industry and other players. We made a lot of inputs. Policies were developed, strategies were planned, and so on and so forth. So we were not really expecting that there would be a turnaround of the economy or industry last year as a result of the introduction of the 24-hour economy. But I think that now that we've set the agenda clearly, we know exactly what we're doing. And remember that the 24-hour economy, initially when it started, it sounded something different. People were thinking we were going to be working around the clock on 24-hour basis. But now the clarity has come. Government is saying that I'm targeting specific projects. They brought in the water corridor projects. They are looking at the value chains. So there are specific defined activities that's going to take place. And therefore, it is not the normal 24-hour economy as we think. But we think those defined areas are equally important. If you're able to get it right, that is what will show up the productivity and eventually lead to the 24-hour economy. So I don't think we felt it that much. But this is not to say we are disappointed. We think that once we set the stage right, we get the right players involved, we get the right funding, and emphasis on funding, because some of the programs we've experienced in the past, much as government will talk about it, they don't push in resources to implement it effectively. And that is where sometimes we have a challenge. So if you have the right framework and the right resources, the right people to work on it, and we all diligently work on it, then we begin to fill the 24-hour economy strongly.
Now, industry, I know your live wire is energy. So I want us to talk about energy. What are your expectations this year as far as the country's energy sector is concerned, power and stability of electricity in the country in 2026? What are you looking at? And what is your data telling in terms of the outlook for our energy sector?
Well, energy has been quite challenging, no doubt about it. The efficiency of it, the cost of it is always a challenge, because I don't think that we've reached the most efficient stage in terms of energy production and distribution to industry. Of late, we've been experiencing a lot of power trips here and there, but we are looking at the reforms that is taking place there. The fact that the private sector is coming in, I know the Ministry of Energy is doing a lot of work in this area. They are bringing private sector participation. They've engaged us, documents have been prepared, and there's the hope that this year would start experiencing that aspect of the energy sector. So when that comes in, the expectation is that efficiency will improve. When efficiency improves, it's only inures to the benefit of the consumers, industry being part of it. So that is what we are expecting. In terms of the tariff levels, we know that normally there is an automatic adjustment system that works, and then there is also the major tariff adjustment every 4 years. Last year, we experienced some significant tariff adjustment around just before December, and that was due to the fact that the major tariff adjustment had to take place. So that brought the tariff levels quite high. We are monitoring to see how it's going to happen in the next quarter, and then the next 2 quarters or so. I'm hoping that we will not have significant adjustment again. We will only be going by the automatic adjustment system, which is defined by specific elements of the energy structure. So if all this works, then we are not expecting very big jump in energy tariffs again. If that happens and we keep it within reasonable, efficient level, then industry will be good to go. But if we increase it too high, already we are not that competitive when it comes to the tariff levels. So excessive increment in that will have an effect on industry, and we have to be cautious about it. But I think that part of it is also because we are highly inefficient when it comes to the energy distribution system, and the private sector participation will probably help us resolve this matter.
Prof, let me have your take on energy sector. What are your expectations, especially on the tangent of the privatization of ECG?
Yes, I think the efficiency in the ECG operations is extremely important. I think when you look at what we have done, we have done some renegotiation with IPPs. That has helped, but you still see that the energy sector shortfalls are still high. We are still not covering the shortfalls. So I will agree with Seth that ensuring greater efficiency in the distribution and the revenue collection, that's going to be key. The adjustment, the automatic adjustment is important that it works. What you don't want is a huge shock. So we go several years or several quarters without any adjustment, and then suddenly industry, everybody gets hit with who knows, 40%, 30%. If it is gradual and more periodic, it's definitely going to help. But the energy sector remains a major constraint to our industrialization, as Seth has alluded to.
Now, I want us to look at the elephant in the room, which is our local currency, the Cedi. How it behaves against major trading currencies like the dollar, the euro, and the pound will determine how the taste of our economy in 2020, if I should put it that way. I want to find out, what do you think the position of the Cedi will be? Are we likely to still see a currency backed by the strength of gold? Or in 2026, are we going to see anything significant happening to the strength of the currency? In terms of its exchange rate between it and the dollar, the president has already given a certain range, saying that they believe that the Cedi should be between 10 and 12. What is the outlook looking like for the Cedi in 2026, Prof?
The Cedi strength, as you've mentioned, is going to come down to the trade balance or the current account balance, which is going to be strongly driven by the gold performance of gold and then other export commodities. In the immediate term, the central bank has enough reserves to support the Cedi, to keep it relatively strong as it has been, still within the 10 to 12 range. If you look at what the new framework that the BOG has announced, now it has to be more transparent about its intervention. And you see that it has announced that this month is going to pump up to $1 billion, I believe.
Yeah.
And announced something is that even if gold prices started easing a little bit, the central bank is still in a relatively strong position to keep the Cedi within the target that obviously has been set, the 10 to 12. It is later on, maybe after the 6 months, what will happen to our reserve position after the 6 months is where it becomes a little dicey, because at the moment the Cedi strength is still too strongly tied to our primary commodity prices. And obviously, because of what we have accumulated, we are in a position to keep it there. I don't think we will see the massive swing where in a short period, 1 month, you see that kind of 30% depreciation, 20% depreciation. The central bank is in a strong position to prevent that kind of thing. I feel that it should also keep the band a little narrower than the 10 to 12% that the president announced. Because you notice that even though...
So Prof, when you say narrower, what do you suggest? What do you think it should be in terms of the range?
So if you are going to keep it within that range, keep it closer to 11. I think a fair value will be somewhere between 13 and 14.
13 and 14.
Obviously, the central bank together with the finance minister have their own targets, which the president has adored. But I would have preferred that we allow it to keep within maybe a 0.5 band, something like maybe 11.5 to 12, and keep it there, because the band is still too wide. And moving from 10.2 to 11.9, it still can cause a lot of destabilization.
That's a very long way.
Exactly. It's such a wide band. So I'm hoping that, even though that is a broader band that the president has announced, we keep it a little bit narrower. Because within that frame, you see that you can still have massive appreciation and depreciation. We've seen that between July and August, where it's been, we get so close to 12 and then we get so close to 10. I think that kind of range is not too helpful. There's still an element of unpredictability for businesses. If we kept it the depreciation within a 5% band, I think that will be relatively easier for businesses to manage.
Okay. Mr. Chumbako, are you going to work with the president's range this year too?
Well, the range is, we have no choice. For businesses, we have no choice. But I think that when it comes to the city, the timeliness of the intervention from Bank of Ghana is always key. Because if you don't get it right, speculation sets in. Part of the reason why we are experiencing significant stability is that Bank of Ghana has managed to take out the speculation element of the cedi depreciation, so that the actual depreciation, if there's any, will come at more from the demand and supply, actual demand and supply situation. Because there were situations where people who didn't need the cedi will buy the cedi and hold as a store of value of their currency. So if you intervene at the right time, then you take out the speculative element and then you keep the cedi in shape. So I think so far Bank of Ghana has done quite well. And if you're able to continue with that, that will help. But I keep saying that is still temporary, or that's still in the short term. In the long term, let's increase our productivity to the extent that we will not have to depend so much on imports and reduce our importation of goods. If you're able to produce a lot more locally and consume more of it locally, then the demand for foreign currency will come down, and then you can be sure that the stability we've experienced today will continue to exist. So I think that is very important. For us as businesses, we have no option. Whatever the range will be, we'll have to work with it. If it goes higher than it is down, we'll work with it. But they all have implications on the economy. And so far, I think the stability has been good. We need to work at it and make sure that it's sustained on a long-term basis.
Prof, at the dying numbers of the year, one SOE that got a lot of attention was the gold board. This year, how do we expect the gold board to transpire, or how do we expect it to, what will be the outlook of gold board in 2026? Is it still going to be that strategic, SOE that is going to support the economy through the inflow of forex? Or, in fact, there's been a lot of, talks around the prospect of gold board going forward. How do you see it in 2026 and beyond?
I expect that we will move away from the current arrangement involving the gold board and the central bank, and let the gold board, have its own capital with which it will trade. And also, we want to see a little bit more transparency in its pricing arrangement. It's clear from what we've seen towards the end of the year that while the intentions are noble, to ensure that we are offering gold prices locally, that will ensure that we reduce the extent of smuggling. It cannot come at the expense of losing so much money. At least the range that we have seen, the one that has been published, I don't think it's something that the economy of Ghana cannot afford to be losing that kind of money. Just because we want to reduce the smuggling of gold. So while it's obvious that the gold board is a very big part of the government strategy, and you understand where it is, why it sees the gold board as an essential element, I think it will continue to be that way. It's important, though, that the pricing arrangement that has brought the losses, that component has to be dealt with. Once that is dealt with, and the lingering questions about whether there are losses or not, and its contribution are addressed, I see the gold board continue to play an important role in what the government is planning. I hope that the aspect of adding value and processing takes a bigger stage than simply saying we are aggregating the gold and we are helping to build the reserves. If that's what we want to do with gold board, I'm afraid that that's just not enough for us.
Well, I want to pick your final comment on this important, projection, and I'm talking about rate cuts this year. I'll start with you, Prof, and then I'll go to Mr. Chumakobua. How many rate cuts are you expecting this year, and where do you expect, cost of borrowing to be in 2026? Briefly.
I definitely expect that there will be a rate cut at the next meeting. if you look at what has happened, the inflation reading we've had since the last meeting, the November meeting, and especially if the December inflation also shows some further downward trend, then you should see a rate cut. Like
so Prof, briefly, how much are we looking at in 2026? If you could give me a single number in terms of the cumulative rate cuts this year.
I mean, it's difficult to say. I think the immediate meetings, the first two meetings, you should expect that you could see a 500 basis points cut. But subsequent
in each of the meetings or combined?
Cumulative.
Cumulative, okay.
But subsequent to that, everything is going to be dependent on how the economy is evolving.
Okay.
You know, it's good to start the year with all these projections, but when you have an extremely open economy, small economy like that, you know, we know that any swing in momentum, any swing in any part of the world affects us. So for now, and based on what I've seen towards the end of the year, I expect that the first two meetings, we might see cuts up to 500 basis points.
Mr. Kwabwa, what do you expect?
Well, we expect the rate to be downward, to have a downward trend. We've always expressed concern over the fact that whenever there's a policy rate cut, we don't see corresponding decline in interest rate. And that has always been a worry. We normally should expect that once you reduce the policy rate, the interest rate should come down for businesses. In most cases, it doesn't happen so. And of course, cumulatively, if you look at last year, we've seen some reduction in the rate cuts. And therefore, if we are projecting this year to be equally good in terms of the stability of the economy and expect consistent policy rate decline, then naturally one would expect that the rate should also come down. My only concern is normally we don't see a corresponding change in the interest rates as a result of a policy rate cut. So we still have good expectation on that there should be some significant reduction in the interest rate.
Can you give me a number? Can you give me a number for 2026?
Well, it's a bit difficult to predict. But if you see significant drop, 500 basis points, that's fine. Because we can't expect overnight solution to our problems. So it's a gradual process. So let it be gradual, but let's see the consistency. And everything is about consistency, which aid your planning. If you are sure that anytime there's a policy rate cut, you are likely to have a decline in the interest rate, then you are in a good trajectory for growth.
Gentlemen, I'm so grateful that you could join on this conversation. We'll take a very quick break. When we come back, we'll have our last leg of this special edition of PM Express. We'll go into governance, galamsey, and anti-corruption. Stick and stay. We'll be right back. Thank you very much for staying with us here on PM Express. This last leg of the conversation, we'll talk about governance, fight against galamsey and anti-corruption. To help me do this, Professor Bafo Ajimendua is former UN Senior Governance Advisor, and Dr. Kenneth Ashigbe, CEO, Ghana Chamber of Mines, and convener, Media Coalition Against Illegal Mining. And then also Dr. Yao Domelevo, former Auditor General, have all joined me via Zoom for this important aspect of our special edition of PM Express here tonight. I want to start from the Constitutional Review Committee. At least we've had the report. We want to see how we're going to forward it or go about it this year. I want to start with Professor Bafo Ajimendua. What are your expectations in terms of the Constitutional Review Committee's report? How are we going to move forward as far as the recommendations are concerned this year?
Thank you for having me. Well, I think what I know is what the President has said himself. When the committee presented the report to the President, he did indicate that he was going to pass it on to an implementation committee. In fact, that led to some speculations whether or not the government will issue a white paper before this submission is done. As I speak to you, I haven't heard any comment on that, whether it's going to be given to, a white paper is going to be issued where the government will make its own decisions on some of the proposals before pushing it on. But I think the general reception of the President has been very, very positive. In fact, he did say that he was briefed privately and independently before the public presentation, which means that so far he is quite conversant with the provisions. and he has not expressed any opposition to any of the proposals. So the assumption here is that perhaps he's, generally speaking, very comfortable with the proposals. And I think he could look at this initiative as one of his legacies if he succeed in reviewing the Constitution and making the changes that have been proposed. So overall, I think the implementation is what we are waiting for, whether there will be a white paper or not. And if it's not, or yes, then what will be the implementation committee has not been constituted yet. So we are waiting to see the next steps from the Jubilee House.
Let's look at all the various recommendations that have been made so far. Which of them do you think will be so difficult to actually carry on with if we are really going into the implementation aspect? Are there low-hanging fruits, and are there some of the recommendations that you think that will be difficult when we decide to step into the waters of implementation?
Well, let me say that the main challenge is with those provisions that are entrenched, that require referendum. And as you know, the previous attempts at review were stemmed by this particular provision, that they should go for nationwide referendum, and you don't know how to structure it. If there are 40 issues or 100 issues, do you present them at the same time or you stagger them? We do not know. But what I know, and what is very, very encouraging, is that this latest committee, the Prempeh Committee, taking that into account, has made some very interesting proposals where we can kind of short-circuit the whole process by putting together those that require a referendum and presenting it for people to endorse. So once that is the provision for referendum is endorsed, it opens the doors for them to go through easily. So we have to look at the strategy for this, but I know that the committee has made a very interesting proposal that will enable all those that require referendum to be taken in the shortest possible time.
Mr. Dumelevo, I want to come to you. What should we expect from oral this year?
Well, thank you very much, and good evening to your listeners and the panelists. I have not seen or heard from most of them this year. Well, the president actually gave us the assurance that the oral is going to move into a full year or a higher year this year. So we hope to see a lot of progress, especially towards recovery of monies looted, and not just the recovery, but also prevention of the same offenses going on. To me, that is usually my area of concern. We can't be mopping the water on the floor as you pour more on the floor. So we must put preventive measures, which means that the president must, or the government must move quickly to pass the Conduct of Public Office Holders Act, which regulates some of the behaviors which are unbecoming of public office holders. We must quickly amend the Internal Audit Agency Act, make internal auditors independent of the spending officers so that they can prevent the looting before it happens. I'm also hoping that they should come out with, and I saw this in the Constitutional Review Committee, their report, and I was very happy. They should come out with the law on reverse betting. If Daniel earns 10,000 per month, at the end of the year, we can reasonably say his total is 120,000. But he has 2 million or 20 million in his bank account. He must explain to us how he got it. This reverse betting is very important. And I also expect the presidency or the government to come out with a law to limit the time it takes to try financial crimes. Because the prayer of these criminals and their lawyers is that they keep postponing the case till there is a change in government, and then you will see nolly prosecutor, etc. So we must be able to put time frame on this type of cases and say, look, this should not go beyond 6 months or 1 year, whatever time. But sorry for crying aloud, trying one case for more about 7 years, 6 years, I think is not acceptable. So these are some of the things I'm expecting. And if we do or what they call change the legal framework, then we can see a lot more cases seeing closure or being brought to an end quickly, and our money is recovered and the corporates punished.
Dr. Shigbe, fight against illegal mining. Do we still have a chance in 2026?
Well, I pray so. I pray so, because see, unfortunately for you and I, we don't have a choice. It is something that is eating us up right from the middle. We've done some work as a coalition, and the turbidity of water is still not looking too pretty. You see that the issues of NIMOS is doing quite well, but unfortunately, again, so when my senior brother, Dr. Domilevu, talks about a limitation on how long it takes to try, financial crimes, it's even worse when it comes to the issues of galamsey. If you look at the number of people who have been arrested so far as NIMOS is concerned, you ask yourself how many of them have been prosecuted, and that seemed to be our bane. And again, as a student of social science, you want to look at empirical evidence. You remember when Operation Vanguard was working, there was a lot of arrests that were made. The cry then was the level of prosecution that were taking place. And unfortunately, it's the same thing that is happening in this particular endeavor as well. So one of the things I would wish is, again, to see His Excellency the President deal with the things that in October 2 years ago, it's not last year anymore, it's October 2024, when he met journalists and he talked about the issue of dealing with kingpins. We have not seen that being done as vociferously and as effectively as we do. Look at the water that we're looking at. The people in Kwenyako have done no wrong, but they currently do not have water. The Bonsa water treatment plant shut down, several of them. And so we need to start dealing with the issues around the politically exposed persons who are involved in it. So we'll be hoping that the president would be a lot more, would push his people, the Attorney General, the IGP and all of that, to deal with the prosecution of the people. The levels that we're getting currently is not acceptable. I would appeal to His Lordship, the Chief Justice. He also has a role to play when it comes to this. The other thing, again, for me, one of the things that I'm hoping that even as we do the constitutional review would also add to it, is the chiefs who are in, whose involvement in galamsey. Anywhere that you see galamsey taking place, you try and go to any of these places, especially the Akan places where land is owned by the stools, and go and try and put a hole or a cutlass on the ground to say you're farming. You will see people come back, the chiefs come at you. So no chief can tell us that galamsey is happening on his land, and he does not know about it. So we need to start also holding the chiefs accountable. I remember one of the things that the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources had talked about was, was putting handcuffs on some of these chiefs who were also, frustrating his effort. So I think that we should pass a law that says that if you're a chief and you allow your land, or you're a landowner, you allow your land, to be used for galamsey, the state will take it away from you and do reclamation and never come back to you.
Can we still count on NIMOS this year?
I think we can count on NIMOS. The challenge with NIMOS is the fact that, the funding that should be provided to NIMOS, I don't think has been provided. Because when we met His Excellency the President at CSOs, one of the promises NIMOS had made to us was the fact that they were going to have permanent basis for NIMOS. I don't think the resources have up. I've heard Parkway Sishandov talk about the fact that in this quarter now that is going to happen. So I am hoping that is going to happen. NIMOS, have permanent basis in some of these places, so that when you come around and you see people engage in galamsey, because they are supposed to be in that place, you can hold them accountable. Again, in the same breath, I'm hoping that we will militarize the Forestry Commission guards, provide them with superior firepower, and make sure we provide them bases within the forest, the same way that we do for those who are in charge of the game and wildlife, the same way they are in there. We need to also start looking critically. One of the major risks that we're beginning to see, which is very existential, is the use of cyanide. A lot of these galamseyers are now bringing, people from Burkina Faso who are doing cyanidization without the rigor that the Minerals Commission and then the EPA would bring to the large-scale miners when they use cyanide. So it is important that also happens, so that we tend to deal with that. And then the issues around demilitarization, these mercenaries that are coming in and providing security for these illegal miners, we need to find ways of dealing with them. I'm also hopeful. In my conversations with the CEO of the Gold Board, the whole issues around traceability is something that is really going to be pushed so that we ensure that, in our quest to be able to get, the goal to be able to support our economy, we don't have the unintended consequences where we start creating, markets for these people. Because you see, one of the things that we need to credit the Gold Board with is the way they've been able to deal very decisively with smuggling. You find out that when Gold Board arrests people, they don't do it like the way we do galamsey. They are decisive. So if we are able to get that same decisiveness with which they deal with the smugglers to do with also people who are mining illegally, and then we also provide avenues for people who want to mine properly to be able to do so, it would be leading to a solution. But currently, as with the situation we're dealing with, you find out that the president has a will to deal with it. The Minister of Lands and Natural Resources putting all the effort really to want to do it, but it's being flouted. And as I keep on saying, in the NPP time, the firefighters were the arsonists. As we speak in this NDC time, the firefighters are also the arsonists again. What is happening to our MMDAs? His Excellency had given them KPIs for galamsey. How is it that we have an MMD and an MMDC or DC or MCE in a particular community, and there's galamsey happening in Clearside, and they would have to take 9 months from Accra with the minister sending them in to be able to come and deal with it? What is happening to that DC, MC in that particular community? So I'm hoping that the president will not also become like the former president, where the Bosomil Fremu DC confessed to an illegality, all we saw was being dismissed. Currently, under His Excellency's government as well, there's a DCE that have been convicted, for contempt, which is related to galamsey. But that DCE also says he is not the guilty one. There's somebody who took him to court who might be the guilty one. So we would expect that things like this should be investigated. And then if the DCE is innocent, he's, set free. And if there's somebody else who is responsible, we'll hold them accountable.
Okay. Prof. Admadu, I mean, last year we saw the Chief Justice being removed. This year, for instance, we've carried into the year 2 petitions, one to remove the EC and then the other also to remove the special prosecutor. My question is, are we likely to see additional removals of persons in such high positions this year?
Well, I pray not. I pray not, because the removal of the Chief Justice really shook the country's justice system. Of course, I'm aware of the argument in support of the removal, but the fact is that we can't have a stable governance when some key institutions of governance, the heads are changed at will, or because we don't like the way they behave. And the problem here is that when we are getting to elections and political parties promise to do ABCDs, especially threatening to remove such officials, and they come to power, they do it, then if we are not careful, it becomes part of our political culture, where any new government will come and target a particular head of institution who, for some reasons, wasn't liked. So my hope is that now that we've done the Chief Justice removal and things are settling down, and I'm waiting to see if there will be any study that will confirm that, in fact, the public trust in the judiciary is going up because of the changes. If that is the case, I'll be happy. So we have to let these things settle down. Regarding the Electoral Commission, again, that was a promise the government made when it was competing for power. Again, of course, I've said many times the former President Akufo-Addo set a bad precedent for removing Charlotte from that position. And therefore, I think this government is also determined to do that. They said it many times. But my hope is that they should find a way of managing this without necessarily adding to this needless culture of removing heads of institutions. It's a matter of giving certain safeguards in terms of better regulations and training or whatever. I think that should be the way forward rather than removing them. For the OSP, I think the president has already requested those who wanted him removed to withdraw their petitions. And that, I think, was a very wise decision by the president. In the same way, I think this president can manage the other requests, other petitions in such a way that we can begin to have a sense of stability rather than a sense of retaliation or you do me, I do you kind of thing that we are bringing into our politics. So let's hope that doesn't happen.
Okay. Mr. Dumeluva, I want us to look at corruption perception index. Are we likely to see a stagnation, a growth, or a decline?
Well, I don't know what results we are going to get. My hope and expectation is that it should improve. Improve in the sense that at least we have gone almost a year into this new administration, not ahead of scandals as it was in the past. So I'm not saying they are not happening, but I'm saying we have not heard of them. So that may drive people's perception. And if that is the case, and I will not be surprised that the index will be positive or show some improvement. I would have wished that the low-hanging fruits that I talked about, the president has taken those seriously. It will have brought about a serious improvement in the perception. That is, if we had passed a law by now to say that once we can establish beyond reasonable doubt that a public servant is owning or in possession of an asset which does not correspond with his or her earnings from the public service, until you can prove to us that there are other means of getting those assets, you are guilty of it, then I think people now know that, yes, there is seriousness in those things. Again, asset declaration law has been on the table before I became Auditor General, and it is still there. We have what they call COPOL, Conduct of Public Office Holders Bill, which addresses a lot of this corruption and corruption-related issues. So if we pass those laws and bring finality to trial of cases, we don't allow it to stand for too long. And I agree with Dr. Ashigwe very well. The courts also, we try to engage the Chief Justice. The courtroom should not be used for 3 or 4 hours in a day, and it is closed, and we go home and come back the next day. If one judge has finished, another judge can also come and sit in. The 24 hours can go to the courtrooms so that we can get cases tried on time. It's disheartening if you have been going to court, like I was in the past. At times you go to court, less than 15 or 10 minutes, the case is adjourned to the next month or 2. And you are like, it seems our time is just being wasted. At times, the judge doesn't even do anything than just call the 2 lawyers, and before you realize, case adjourned to so and so date. So if we can change all those things, and we know that be it a galamsey or a corruption-related issue, within 6 months, you will have known your fate.
Now, you submitted a number of cases via oral to the AG. Now, I want to ask, in terms of the high-profile cases submitted to the Attorney General, what are your expectations in 2026 from the AG's office?
My expectation is the same as I've been saying. When you're going to fight corruption, you should fight it from the top. So you should take the high-profile cases, because in public financial management...
So what do you expect from the AG this year?
Yes, you should pick the big ones, the prominent ones, and move with speed, because people are losing hope, people are losing confidence, people think it's going to be business as usual, nothing is going to happen. So if it is possible, you should come out with different teams. Some of the issues, remember, I've said time and again, that they need to be audited. We can't just pick what is in our report and go to court. So you should give it out for several audits to be happening concurrently, investigations done concurrently, so that we can start telling people that this is progress we have done. And I think that will be good.
Now, Dr. Kenashigbe, what do you expect from the AG in terms of prosecution as far as the fight against illegal mining is concerned? Hello, Dr. Ashigbe.
Sorry. sorry. Okay. So there's that content mining issue that has been going on forever. I would expect that, some speed will come to that.
Okay.
There were the issues about the cases that the AG asked the Yoko to look into. I think that's also taken to look.
Okay.
There's a situation of Professor Frimpong-Boate's report. Again, that had also mentions of politically exposed person. I would hope that also will be looked into.
Okay.
But the kingpins, I would expect the AG to deal with the kingpins so that we can get to the roots of the problem.
Well, in fact, gentlemen, I'm so grateful that you could join us here on PM Express. This has been PM Express with me, Isaac Kofi. And we brought you a special edition talking about what to expect in 2026, starting from politics to economy, governance, and the fight against illegal mining and anti-corruption. And do have a great night. This has been PM Express with me, Isaac Kofi.